Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is a very different type of video you see usually, as I actually have a guest with me today. We're going to talk about all things citizenship, residency, and geography. It's Luke from Embassy. Thank you for joining me, Luke.
Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So, we've been talking for a while. I actually forgot to, press record, which is great. But we've been talking for a while. You've just been on it. You've been pretty much all over the world. You've been to South America, which is what we've been talking about the most. What I'd like to know is pretty much why, the first time you went to South America, what country was it, and what made you think, do you know what? Screw Cyprus, I'm going to South America.
Well, that country was Argentina.
Yeah.
I'd always been fascinated by Argentina. Weirdly enough, I love the flag. I love the colors, like the light blue colors. And they just won the World Cup, and it was big in everybody's minds. And yeah, I just, researching it more and more, hearing that it was like this European country where like I think 90% of the population is from Italian or Spanish ancestry. So super European vibe. And I just found it so interesting how this country at the bottom of the world that used to be the richest country in the world, 100 years ago, Argentina was on track to be the richest country. And yeah, I just that was my gateway drug to loving Latin America, basically. And I think if you want to go to Latin America, I think Argentina is the best because it's like Latin America in easy mode because it feels like Europe. It's not like you're going, I'd say like a place like Colombia or Central America or Ecuador is like jumping straight into the deep end, where Argentina is very much way more chilled out. It just feels like a European place. The cultures are much more similar. So
Yeah, I'd imagine, and we've been talking about their family values and that, which is quite a European thing. You can kind of see where Argentina adopted their whole family orientated type of culture. But honestly, when you say that it's such a calm place, that's what I hear all the time about Argentina. Obviously, it's a Mercosur country, which has major benefits if you're looking for citizenship, which we'll also get into. But Argentina, it just seems like, and to me, it was Chile. I've made a video on Chile. I've made a video on Chilean citizenship. But to me, it's Argentina and Chile that are always the top countries in South America, certainly the Spanish-speaking ones. I mean, obviously, it's quite unfortunate the only English-speaking country in South America is Guyana, where obviously you're not allowed to drink the juice.
It's in Belize as well. Belize is English speaking.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Sorry, I classed that as Central America. Yeah. But
I just refer to it as Latin America. I just think Mexico down, Latin America.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, because there's no Cyrillic countries there, and but honestly, it's apart from Brazil. I'm sure have you been to Brazil?
No, I've been right up on the border, but I haven't actually been into Brazil yet.
Yeah, because I'd be really curious to see what the cultural differences are like between Brazil and these Argentina, Chile countries, because Brazil was a Portuguese colony, but Argentina and Chile were Spanish. So I'd imagine that Portuguese and Spanish cultures may be a bit similar, but what I'd really expect to see if I ever go to these countries is how similar and how different are they,
Well, so something that's interesting. So also Uruguay is very similar. Argentina and Uruguay, extremely similar. Chile is a little bit different, has a bit of a different vibe, but I get what you mean grouping them together. But so Argentina, Uruguay, and the south of Brazil are very similar in culture. Like they drink mate. Do you know what that is?
I think I'm familiar.
A cup with a straw. It's like their version of tea.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
of course, yeah.
that's very similar in the south of Brazil. They all drink mate, and I think the culture is very similar. But I think when you get a bit more north, it's a bit different. But I know for sure that the south of Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina have very similar cultures. And when you cross into Chile, like I've been to Santiago, it feels actually a little bit American, like a little bit like American and Canadian. Some people say it feels a bit like Canada. It feels a bit more of that type of vibe, where when you're in Argentina, definitely more European vibe, but then Chile feels a bit more influenced by the US and Canada.
Yeah, because I always see online as well, Uruguay, as you mentioned, it's quite like a maybe it's a bit like a Monaco of South America. You see a lot of like cruises and shipping ports, and just a lot of expats living there, the digital nomad lifestyle.
It used to be called the Switzerland of South America because they used to have extremely strong banking privacy laws.
Okay.
They don't anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, it used to be called the Switzerland of South America for that reason. But Uruguay is very, it's a chilled out country. They don't have any problems with any other country. So Uruguay is a very good place for a plan B, where if you're living in South America, maybe in an Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil, whatever, Uruguay is a very good place to set up your banking, because Uruguay is very good for sending large amounts of money in and out of Latin America. Where if you're in some of these other countries, you're going to have a lot of problems sending large amounts of money in and out. So Uruguay is still like the best place to bank in Latin America, in my opinion.
Yeah, how safe is, places like Montevideo and Buenos Aires and these types of areas?
So Uruguay, extremely safe, extremely safe. No problems are really going to happen in Uruguay. Argentina, everybody says it's a little bit unsafe. I was there for 6 months. I didn't have any problems personally. I had one experience where it wasn't in Buenos Aires, it was in like a different city. I almost got robbed by like a motorbike. Like two guys on a motorbike.
Yeah.
But I noticed it quickly, got out of there. But other than that, it was completely fine. Like, I'm sure you know that Argentina has some issues with the Falklands.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a bit of a
Yeah.
sensitive topic in Argentina. But yeah, I remember one time there was this drunk guy, and it was a weird story. I was wearing Reeboks. I don't know if you know, but Reeboks have like the British flag on them.
Okay. Yeah.
He was drunk or something, and he saw like my shoes, and he was like, saying Inglaterra, Inglaterra, Islas Malvinas son Argentina, and like he was like going a bit crazy on me about it. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, just that was the only real experience. Everybody else, people make jokes like when they're talking to you, like, "Oh, I'm a traitor for talking to an English person," but it's not like the young people don't really care that much about it. It's like I even went to a museum about the war. And when I first went in, I was with someone that was Argentinian, and they kind of translated for me because my Spanish wasn't that good back then. And that I just said I was American to start with, just to
Okay.
see like. And then eventually they told them I was English, and they said, "Yeah, we knew from the start he was English. We don't have a problem." And then they wanted to take a picture of me and put it on the wall, because apparently I was the only English person to ever visit, because it
Oh,
was like
no.
middle of nowhere Argentina, like this tiny little one room museum about the war. And I was the only English person to ever visit there. So they found it really, really entertaining, I guess, that I was there.
Yeah, that's what they told you. What they actually did was they're going to use your photograph on a load of
Yeah,
propaganda pictures, going, you see, even the British agree
yeah,
with us. Like,
yeah,
I mean, maybe that's what they decided to use it for.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting part of the world for sure. And I think in Argentina, in that sort of space, like the south of South America, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, and Paraguay as well, you have a lot of freedom. One thing about these countries is, I know in Paraguay for sure, when you become a resident, you can own a gun very easily. Same in Argentina, and it's similar. And Uruguay, I think, has some of the highest per capita gun ownership outside of the US. Um, personal gun ownership, and it's really, that is similar to America in that sense, with like the right to bear arms and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I think Switzerland also has got quite a high.
Yeah, I was going to say that
Gun.
about, yeah, but obviously, I mean, I'm talking about personal gun
Yeah.
ownership. I think the Switzerland is more to do with the military, isn't it? Has one of the
Oh,
highest levels because everybody in Switzerland does military service.
yeah.
I know if you Google per capita gun ownership, Uruguay's up there, really, really high at the top. Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
an
So
outlier.
Yeah, so it does seem like these really deep South American countries do seem to be the place to be. They're
Yeah,
far away, which I actually see as a benefit. I don't always think it's a good thing to be close to everything, because if you're close to everything, you might get the good things, fair enough, but you might also get the bad things. I think being far away, places like Australia, New Zealand, while they may have their flaws, there's a benefit to them being so far away from the rest of the world, from like Eurasia and that, or like the small Pacific islands in the east, or even Argentina, Chile, and the Falkland Islands. The fact that they're so far away, I actually do see quite a big benefit in that, because I kind of like the idea of being, I'm on this part of the world, whereas my mates are over here, and it's kind of mad that we're in completely different places at the same time.
yeah.
But just out of curiosity, would you ever go to the Falkland Islands?
Yeah, so that's actually somewhere I want to visit quite badly. I was looking actually at the, the MOD have a twice weekly flight to the Falklands.
Yeah.
From Brize Norton, but it's about £2,500 return flight, so it's a little bit expensive. And then I know you can fly from Chile there. I think they have a once weekly flight from Chile or something like that, but that's also about £1,500. So it's not like, oh, I just want to pop down to the Falklands tomorrow. It's a bit of a hassle to get there, should we say. But with what you were saying about it being far away from everything, I fully agree. Like, if there was ever a war in Europe or something, South America is one of the best places to be. But that's the thing. I felt, very safe down there, being far away from all the troubles in Europe. But at the same time, I don't know if I could live there like for a long-term period of time, because I felt so isolated. Like, if I needed to be somewhere for business quickly, you just can't hop on a plane and be in the UK or Dubai in a few hours. Like, the flight to the UK, yeah, BA offer a flight from Buenos Aires to London, but it's usually like $5,000. Like, if you're booking it, like, yeah, if you're booking it months in advance, it's cheaper. But I remember like trying to book it a couple of weeks in advance, and it was like $5,000 for the BA flight. So you have to, like, if you don't want to pay 5K for economy, you have to, like, change flights in Mexico or something, and it's just a hassle to get back to Europe. Pretty much, it's just very disconnected from the rest of the world. That's the issue with that part of the world, pretty much.
Yeah, I can understand that, because I was actually looking at flights to a completely different place, French Polynesia, to the main island, Tahiti, and I was expecting that you could go eastwards, maybe UK, Dubai, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and then French Polynesia. But you can only do it through UK, some European country, let's say Germany, Frankfurt Airport, and then Los Angeles, and then all the way down, which to me doesn't really make sense because of the distance. But again, yeah, I do agree. Actually, I never actually thought about it that way with Argentina. That the fact that it is so far away, if you do need to go to Europe or the UK or anywhere else that isn't in South America, you're going to have I imagine you're going to have some trouble getting anywhere.
Well, yeah, the issue with South America is there's no direct flights from South America to Asia.
Okay, yeah.
So I know Sao Paulo is quite good. From Sao Paulo, you can fly to Dubai direct. So that is, but it's like, even if I wanted to get to Dubai, okay, you're in Buenos Aires. I have to fly up to Sao Paulo, deal with like the Brazilian airport, which is not going to be efficient, all of that crap, and then get on a plane for another like 14 hours to Dubai and whatever. And it's just like, it's not a pleasant experience basically to get anywhere. So the benefit of that's why I think Dubai is such a great city. Like, it's so centrally located between Europe and Asia. It's like the perfect place to be for travel, pretty much. And obviously, Emirates is such a great airline. You can pretty much fly anywhere in the world with Emirates. But yeah, it's like South America, really good to be away from everything, chilled out lifestyle, whatever. But I think for building a business when you're young, I think Asia is probably the better choice for young entrepreneurs.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you always hear about Singapore. The one drawback that I always find with Singapore, actually there are two, is that they don't allow dual nationality, and also I mean, maybe if you're naturalized, you'll be exempt, but they've got conscription for citizens. I think maybe just for male citizens. But with Singapore, that's always the key flaws that I find with it, is that, you can't keep any of your other passports, and if not you, your children would probably have to join the army, which is a bit weird if you're not Singaporean. I think, if you're not from there, it might be a bit of a weird thing for you to do, or for your children to do when they grow up. But yeah, maybe. I mean, obviously, you see a lot of digital nomads that are living out of the Philippines, or maybe some countries on Borneo Island. You don't really see it in Brunei, Malaysia, or Indonesia, or East Timor. But the Philippines, yeah, maybe. What I always wonder is, why aren't there any or many popular digital nomads that are living like in the Pacific Islands? Because yeah, they're far away, but they're also like paradises on Earth. Like if you look at Nauru, Palau, Tuvalu, Fiji, these places.
Well, I mean, I think the reason is because they're so far away. It's like, and I think on the, just it's going to be any island in the world. Food and stuff is super expensive.
Yeah, true.
So it's not a very cheap place to live. But yeah, I get what you like. Palau is very interesting. I'm not sure if you saw they have the digital residency now.
Oh, do they? No, I wasn't aware
Yeah.
of Palau's
Yeah,
DR.
so they actually have a digital residency where they have some plans for it in the future. Right now, there's not really many use cases, but you can basically pay like $250 per year and you get a Palau government ID, like an
Okay.
official government ID that you could basically use to open a bank account, or a domestic flight or something. And they're trying to introduce like, what's it called? Virtual addresses, like where you could basically, and like virtual company setups and stuff like this, and they're trying to like make it useful, like. But yeah, Palau is quite interesting in that respect. But yeah, it's just so hard to get to those countries, and it takes such a long time, and it's so expensive there. But I think the thing about Asia, the trade-off is you have to kind of go to Asia knowing you're not going to get a passport. It's like, that's just the trade-off of Asia. You're probably not going to ever get the passport.
Yeah,
Where,
maybe.
Latin America, Europe, you're going to get the passport eventually. But I think like when you're like 20, 21 years old, if you're trying to build a business, I think Asia is probably the place to be because it's so efficient to be there. And, you can kind of just focus on your business. You can live super cheap. Where South America obviously is good for that in some respects, but there's just a lot of hassle. Like just sometimes in Argentina, I found myself wasting the whole day just trying to sort out a simple problem. Like you had to Western Union yourself money because the credit cards would charge you double the amount. It is hard to explain, but there's two exchange rates in Argentina. So you had to Western Union yourself money. You'd go to one Western Union. Oh no, we don't have any cash. You have to go to another one. It's just like, just sometimes you can waste the whole day on stuff that you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, and I imagine with Argentina, you've seen a lot in the news of like the hyperinflation that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like I'd imagine things are quite expensive. I remember a few months ago reading that inflation was up at 100%. Now I don't know about that. Maybe you could give us some info on that. But when you were in Argentina,
Yeah.
was it like hella expensive or not really?
Bro, it's the complete opposite. It's the cheapest country in the world.
Oh, mad. Okay.
Yeah. So pretty much if you for food, cheapest country in the world. Like a ribeye was like $1.
Okay.
Like it's crazy. But obviously for imported stuff it's more expensive, but a lot of companies didn't increase their prices. So like Ralph Lauren you could order it online and get it imported into Argentina with no import fees. And it was like 80% off the prices in the UK for like Ralph Lauren and like some of these companies. And like, yeah, some of the companies were much cheaper, but at the same time, like electronics are much more expensive and all of that stuff. But if you're just living there and you want to rent a place and you want to eat good food, it's super cheap to live there. It's insane.
Yeah. What? Yeah, I imagine. And obviously, I think the main benefit of like obviously, you say if you're a young entrepreneur, then go to Asia. I imagine countries like Singapore or Philippines or what have you.
Yeah.
But with Argentina, don't you see it as a huge incentive, the shortened residency to citizenship stuff? Because 2 years is not a long time. 2 years goes by like that, and you could be
Yeah.
a citizen of a whole new country. Like that's insane, and something I really like about Argentina. I hope some other countries may adopt that too. To drive foreign people going there. Honestly, like if I was ever to go to Argentina, I'd kind of feel bad if I left any time before 2 years, or the 6 month loophole that you could do with immigration, where you say, okay, I need to leave for business, what have you.
Yeah.
But honestly, with that, I just feel bad because I'm thinking if I ever go to Argentina, it isn't just for a vacation, then I probably want to stay there until I get the passport, until I get the Mercosur passport.
Well, I already been there for 6 months, so technically, well, this is the thing. I was there and I spoke to the immigration services, and they said because I was there on a tourist visa, this doesn't count towards it. But from lawyers, I've heard the opposite. I've heard they can argue that
Okay.
it does count towards it. So technically, I've already done 6 months of residency there for this like year, so I can pretty much just need to do 6 months again, and then I can get the passport if I hire a good lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's like with residency as well. I don't know if you know this. I saw it online recently. There was it's in a completely different part of the world. This is Japan. There
Right.
was a Russian guy who went to Japan, I think, to study at university like 5 years ago. And
Yeah.
Japan has a thing where you don't need to get PR in order to get citizenship. you can get citizenship after 5 years, but you don't need PR, which is quite weird because when you think of Europe, you always need PR for about a year before applying for the passport. But Japan, you can either get PR or citizenship after 5 years. Now, the benefit of PR is you can obviously stay in Japan, you can live in Japan permanently, you can also keep your other passports, but the benefit of Japanese citizenship is you get one of the strongest passports in the world. Yeah, you have to renounce your other ones, but you become officially Japanese. And also, do you know what's mad? You know how the United States has a thing where if you're a permanent residency green card holder and you leave the country for over a year, it like automatically expires. Japan, if you're a PR, 5 years living outside the country, and only after 5 years would it expire. So you could get a Japanese PR, dip for 4 years, go traveling like yourself, go back, and it's still valid, which I think is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of countries are like that, where you get 5 years with PR out of the country. Which is obviously, I don't think you ever really want to be a US green card holder, though, outside of the US anyway, because I'm pretty sure green card holders also get taxed on their worldwide income.
I think they do. I'm not sure, to be honest, but
I've heard that
to be honest, if citizens do, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up thinking the US passport was one of the best passports to have in the world, but as I've grown up, I've realized that it's definitely not one of the best passports to have.
No, I've got an American mate he's an American citizen, but he's also a British citizen.
Yeah.
And we were talking a few months ago, and I think I remember him telling me that he can never open a Swiss bank account ever.
Never.
Even if he does with a British passport, which is fine. The fact that he's American is like a huge no-no, red flag type shit. Like that's done for him for good.
Yeah.
But then again, you've also got access to the US, which is like one of the biggest countries one of the most developed countries in the world. How we were talking, they're very entrepreneurial minded, they're very supportive. I've experienced that too in my time in the south of the US. They very much believe in each other, they believe in you, which is a huge benefit. But I completely agree. The passport, I also grew up thinking, if only one day I can get the American passport. Now I'm sort of thinking, do I mean, if I want to live there, sure, but maybe if I'm trying to live an expat type lifestyle, it's probably not the best choice.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a Swiss bank account, and that's the good thing about a British passport, is it's super easy to open bank accounts, because even though some people know the truth about England and how it is now, a lot of people still think England is like this magical country that is like one of the best in the world, and they very much respect British people and the British passport. So it's very good for opening bank accounts and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the US, if you're not living in the US, the US passport is terrible. And as well, there's stuff like, if you go into business with an American, even though you're not American yourself, you now have to report all that business's filings to the IRS in the US and all of this stuff. But something interesting about the US is it's actually very, very attractive to bank in the US as a non-citizen and a non-resident. Like, the US is actually one of the biggest tax havens in the entire world, because you can open a US LLC as a non-resident, non-citizen, and now that LLC is like a non-taxable entity. So it's basically a pass-through entity where that company doesn't pay any tax because it's owned by foreign nationals. And also, do you know what CRS is?
No, I don't know.
So there's something called the Common Reporting Standard, CRS, where like most countries are signed up to it, where, for example, you open a bank account in Italy and the UK are part of CRS. So Italy reports banking information on you back to the UK. Where the US actually isn't part of CRS, so it's actually a huge tax haven, which is kind of funny because the US is so strict on its own people abroad, like not being able to do anything, but like for other nationals coming into the US, it's very attractive to bank there.
Yeah, maybe that's just to drive people to, like, yeah, they might not get residency from that and all that if they open an LLC, but maybe after a while they might, change their policies, or maybe they'll have a clause where, if you've had this account with us for 5 years or whatever, you can apply for residency. I'd imagine it might be one of those things where they try to, get tourists, get foreigners into their country, so that down the line, maybe in 10, 15, 20 years, they could get naturalized, become US citizens. I would imagine that may happen. I don't know what the policies are, of course, but. And yeah, I do like the US. And what I always find mad is, obviously, I studied US history at my time there. And the whole country pretty much started by people throwing tea into the Atlantic. Like,
Yeah,
that's why the country is that's why it's a country now, which I
yeah,
always find mad. And they threw tea into the Atlantic because they didn't want to pay tax on it. And now, obviously, what you've just said, but when
yeah,
you look at American citizens who are living abroad, it's one of the highest taxed countries in the world,
yeah.
especially for American expats who are living outside who don't have other passports, haven't renounced or what have you. But I always find it mad that how it used to be, and I think it was in the early 20th century when their whole tax policy completely went a 180. I think it was in the early 1910s, maybe before World War One or maybe just after, where it did a whole 180, and now they're one of the highest tax countries in the world, which is
Yeah.
quite mad.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny how the US values personal freedom so much. But if you're a US citizen living abroad, you have to report everything back to the government, all your bank accounts, all of this, all of that. Like, it's crazy. But one thing I do respect about the US is obviously like the freedom of speech. In Europe, we do not have freedom of speech at all. I like how in the US you can say anything you want and you're protected under, is it the Second Amendment?
First,
The First Amendment, yeah. The Second Amendment is the gun one, right? The right to bear
yeah,
arms. Yeah,
correct, yeah,
so
correct.
yeah, you're protected under the First Amendment, and that's something I really respect about the US, the ability of that, because as we both know, in the UK, you do not have freedom of speech here at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you do it. I think you've got better freedom of speech here than you would in other countries. But
Of course, yeah.
I do understand what you're saying, absolutely. And with the US, I always do like how, and the way they teach it to you in school, because obviously my like spent a few years in America, and I kind of went through the important school years there.
Yep.
And they do teach you why the country started, but they teach it to you in a positive way, which is completely, it's their country that they might. I'd be surprised if they didn't do it that way. But they teach it to you as if we threw the tea in the ocean, we threw the tea in the Atlantic, we fought a revolution, we stopped a whole war because some dude in a mountain shot a bullet and no one knew who it was, so the British retreated. And honestly, they do inundate you with that feeling of freedom that you're in this country, you're in a free country now, and they completely ignore all the politics of it. They completely ignore, who's the Democrat or who's the Republican. They, in the schools at least when I was, I don't know what it's like now. I'd imagine it's a little bit different, but during my time there a few years ago, it was very, we're Americans. We've got freedom of speech. We're the freest country in the world, which is debatable, I'm sure. You just have to watch the Snowden film, but
Yeah.
honestly, like, their freedom of speech is amazing. And honestly, we've talked about this a bit earlier before we started the show. It's that belief in each other, which I think is the best thing about the United States. If we ignore all their bureaucracy as a country for foreign expats, it is actually, I don't know if you know this, the US, Americans read the most self-help books and like entrepreneurial motivational books per capita, which is mad, and I absolutely respect that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, my time in America, I've seen, it firsthand, people, Americans always get along. Like, you know, I've been in situations where Americans have been put together and they put politics aside and they're Americans together. And, it's like that's something I respect about them. And Americans are very, very friendly, very hospitable,
Agreed, yeah.
and some of the nicest people in the world. Yeah. And they're very proud to be American. Like, I have family in Texas, and they're very proud to be Texans and Americans, and
Yeah.
the house is themed like Texas, and they're just Americans are very proud of their country, and they it's that pretty much the only country in the world where they're all quoting the Second and the First Amendment, and
Yeah, it's mad, and I do rate it in that regard. That obviously it is debatable. Not everything in that country is great. Like every country, I don't think there is one country in the world that's absolutely perfect. They all have they've got their pros and their cons. Let's put it that way.
yeah,
But honestly, what you said, how Americans are so proud of being American, it's because it is instilled in them, like in the schools. Like in the
yeah,
schools, yeah, they've got all the the math and the algebra and the geometry and the social studies and all that good stuff. But they also have like American history where they ignore history from the rest of the world. They simply go, okay, how did our country start? And the good thing is they're very obviously when they get closer and closer to the Declaration of Independence, they start getting more patriotic. But
yeah,
at the start, when there were some huge red flags at what the people were doing there, like huge flaws of the shit that went down in the 16 and early 1700s, they're very neutral about it. Like they say, yeah, this happened, it was terrible. And they don't say a but, there is no but clause. They just say, yeah, this happened, this shouldn't have happened, this was terrible. And then they move on to the next thing. And as they get closer and closer to the 4th of July, 1776 or 1787, they get this huge wave of, and this is how we did it. We became a country. And I absolutely respect it. Like, I don't know about your time in America. Did you experience that drive of you can become anything you want?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's something we spoke about as well before we started recording, how Americans, really are brought up to think that they can do anything in a very inspiring place. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're in a country where, your country put the people on the moon. Like,
Yeah.
your country, have so many, innovative people coming out of America. So, America shaped the modern world. And yeah, like it's so different from the UK, where in America so many people are positive, and it's such a positive place to be in that respect. But on the other hand, America is very divided, and it can really turn quick. I've seen it turn quickly from everybody's jolly, getting along. We're all Americans in this together. Bang, politics comes up. Oh my God, it's completely different. Everybody's suddenly enemies, and yeah, it's a very together country and a very divided country at the same time. It's a very weird country in that respect.
I think the best way to describe it is, I'm sure you've seen these memes where it's like there's like a murder documentary and it goes, everything was perfect until it wasn't. Yeah, I'd imagine it's one of those type things. But yeah, absolutely. And also like with America, what you said about the positivity, it's so true because they don't they don't put pressure on you to be like confident or positive or anything. They say, okay, maybe you're not doing well now, but in 1 year, if you keep going the way you're going, you're going to be a master. You're going to have mastered this topic or this level or this subject.
Yep.
And honestly, I think with the UK, as much as I like the UK, and there are good things about it for sure, one thing I do think the UK has adopted from America that is a flaw is the political division. I do see that here too.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of inability to negotiate and to have a civilized conversation in both ends. Like with when America gets into politics, apart from some sectors, some podcasts, some shows like that, it gets very hostile very quickly. Same thing in the UK. You struggle to find one where they have someone on the left wing and the right wing, even though they belong to the same bird, in my opinion. You struggle to find a show where the two come together for the audience and they stay civilized. It gets hostile very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's quite a lot to do with universities. I think universities really have a lot of propaganda in them, and they really drive people up to be divided. And I've seen it firsthand, like in the UK, and I know the US universities are quite similar, where like the universities are really like brainwashing the students and turning them into like these political warriors. And yeah, it's just a bit like some people in the US and in the UK as well, they think that like politics is the most important thing, and that their personality is politics pretty much. And they really think that if this political party comes into power, it's going to really change their life and it's going to affect them. When I think that when you leave these countries, you get to a point where you realize that it's kind of a pantomime, especially in the UK. US is a little bit different because obviously anybody can be president. The UK is a complete pantomime. Both political parties are literally the exact same. Like, they say that the Conservatives are right wing. They are. If you look at Conservative compared to other right wing parties, the Conservatives are very centrist, left wing. And then obviously Labour is a little bit more left wing, but they both pretty much agree on every single issue. And, to become prime minister, you have to be, a member of the party, and the party that gets the most seats becomes prime minister. And it's like, I like how in the US, anybody can be president. Anybody can run for election to be president. And in the UK, we're only ever going to have career politicians because of the way our system is set up. And that's the issue with the politics in the UK.
Yeah, and I agree, and I agree with what you said about the pantomime. Like, I'm sure you've experienced this too when you've travelled around the world. Like, for me, when I was in Europe, I was in Germany, and I was sat in a hotel. I was sat in a hotel, and I just thought, so obviously I'm British, right? I'm a British citizen as well, but I don't, look. During my holiday, I don't like to look at the British. I don't like to look at the news anyway, but certainly not while on holiday.
Sure. Yeah.
because they never report anything good or true. And
Yeah.
and I was sat back in Germany. I thought, do you know what? I'm in a country where no matter what happens in the UK, this doesn't affect me. I'm outside the country's jurisdiction. They can implement whatever new autocratic or draconian law they want. I'm in Germany. I'm chilling. I'm sure you've experienced the same when you're outside of your home country, living as an expat and that, where you think, okay, maybe even with American politics, oh yeah, Biden said this. Who cares? Get over it. Go to Argentina. I guarantee no one cares.
Yeah, for sure. That is the thing that happens. You leave your home country and you don't care about politics at all anymore. Like when I was in Argentina, I couldn't care less what the government did because it just doesn't affect you. And you realize that at the end of the day, politics really doesn't affect you. And, I agree with whenever I look at the UK news, like the BBC, Sky News, it's so negative. It's like the way everything is worded to instill anxiety in you. Like the Sky News always use the hook like this is coming. Should you be worried about this? And it's just all like, should you be worried about this? This is going to put you in danger. Where I made a video about it actually. Like in Dubai, the news is very positive. It's about like a student achieved this, a new company is doing this innovation, and the news there is so positive. And whenever I read the UK news, it's hard not to do it when I'm in the UK, but when I'm out of the country, I never read the UK news. But when I'm here, I do find myself checking the news sometimes, and it's so negative. I instantly feel worse now I've read the news. It's crazy. But yeah, that's just the main difference I've noticed.
Yeah, I wonder what the correlation is between the negative news and the negativity sort of jealous vibe. That's the best way I can put it, like we were discussing, because I'd imagine in Dubai when you read, okay, this student got whatever their system is, best grade in their system, like let's say an A star, they're probably going to read it and their thought is probably not going to be, oh, they got an A star, blah, 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 geek, nerd, whatever. And even though I don't think exams are the best thing or the worst thing in the world, but I imagine in the UK, if they read, well, someone got the best grades in the world, the first reaction is probably going to be, oh my God, I didn't do that. Or when someone becomes a self-made millionaire, or when someone's self-employed, or when someone does anything outside of the box, the first thought isn't, okay, someone's done something outside the box, I haven't done that yet. How can I learn? What can I learn from this person? It's automatically, why have they done that? They're probably not doing it right, blah, 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 blah. All this jealousy, negative stuff.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think maybe one of the reasons behind this is, I'm sure you've seen it in Eastern Europe, is that other countries have a strong sense of national identity. And of course, the UAE has a very strong sense of national identity. Even people that are never going to be Emirati in their entire life are still so proud to live there.
Yeah.
And that is something that the UK severely lacks. There is no national identity. There's no national, like, no, it's not like we're British, we're in this together, we're proud to be British. Every single person hates this country. Like, unless you're like 60 years old, and they even still hate it themselves. Speak to an old person in the UK, they'll tell you, yeah, I'm proud to be British, blah blah, but at the same time they'll moan for 10 minutes about every issue with the country. And British people love to moan, but they'll never move, they'll never leave. Well, I'm one of the British people where I left. So like, yeah, that is the issue. Like, British people will moan all day about the country, but they'll never leave. And that, I think that is why in other countries they can be proud, because it's like, okay, this Emirati student achieved something remarkable. I'm so proud of my country for having somebody so smart in my country. And where in the UK, it's just not seen like that at all. And I think that's something the UK really has to fix, because I just don't see a way that the UK can function as a country where there's no national identity. And the UK is so divided. Like, at least in America, it's divided, but they have a national identity. But I'm like, you obviously not being fully, you have other passports and whatever. Like, how do you see that as being a bit of an outsider?
Well, I think it's weird because obviously what I hear with I was actually speaking to another guy who's in a bit of a similar situation to me. He's not a naturalized British citizen. He has the ILM, the indefinite leave to remain.
Yeah.
He's only got one passport. It's not the one I have. He's a Polish guy, but he pretty much grew up here in the UK. he's got a British accent and everything. He speaks Polish, but that's about it, and the passport.
Yeah.
And he was telling me how how they came here, for a better life, which I imagine in the early 2000s they probably did. The Poland was in the Warsaw Pact. I'm not surprised that people came to the West for a better life. I think most people still do, and I think we do need to give them some credit for that. But he was saying how it's mad because everyone here is so negative, and when he goes to Poland, it's such a calm feeling for him. He doesn't feel like he's. It's weird because I think me and other immigrant children, we feel like we're at home in everywhere and also not at home everywhere too. Where we always think, okay, this is where I'm living right now, but it's getting to become a bit of a failed society. Thank God that we can bounce if we want to. We don't have to worry about visas or anything. That's what I think. I also think it's quite a. I agree with some of the complaints people have, like we've been talking about how there's no national identity and how it can get so divided and how politics can become so hostile. But then again, there's also a part of me, there's two flaws I have with it. One is I think it's just a divide and conquer strategy. We can look at ancient Rome and ancient Greece. This is huge textbook, keep the plebs poor, keep the plebs divided so they don't wake up type of shit.
Yeah.
But then again, I also see some of the complaints people have with this country has been such Western problems. Now, when people say, "Oh, I hate this country because of blah blah blah," I always think, "Okay, is this also a problem in Eritrea?" If the answer is no, it's probably not that big of a problem.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Something interesting, like for me, I've always found myself like relating to and getting along better with like non-British people. Like growing up, I went to like a school that was very like there was probably more immigrants than British people going to that school. So I grew up being friends with like Polish people, Portuguese people, Indian people, like whatever, people from everywhere. And I've always like when I'm traveling, I always find it so easy to get along and talk with people from other countries. And I think that whenever I talk to British people, they always seem very immature, like very uneducated about the world. And something I want to know from you, like, how do you see it? Do you find yourself getting along with British people more or more like immigrants?
I've got British friends where I'm at. There aren't many immigrants. Like there's a couple Polish people. That's about it, really. So in that regard,
You want to say?
but no. But there's some Polish people, which is literally about it. There's like three, right?
Yeah.
And obviously British people get along with fine. I don't really like their negativity, and they've got something which I like, which it's not. I didn't invent this. I'm not going to start taking credit for this shit, but they've got something which people, I should say, call champagne socialism. I'm pretty sure you're aware of it, but it's
Where
it's
like
where they.
most people are socialist and they think socialism is good and stuff. Is that what it is, or?
It's like when rich people say, "Oh yeah, you shouldn't be rich." It's that type of shit.
Right. Yeah. The UK
So
has
they so Yeah, so they go, you need to pay more in tax, and then you find out they've done a load of tax loopholes and they've bought $1 million estate in the Bahamas. One of those type of things. But I get along with immigrants well. I actually met more immigrants in the US than I did in the UK. Like I had a pretty good Danish friend there, and I had like, obviously a lot of Latin friends, from Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, these types of countries, really like more of the northern Central American countries.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get along with immigrants because what I find is, and I don't know if this is just because of my situation, but we sort of see eye to eye on the country we're in. Like with British people, it's a bit of a 50-50. You don't really know what you're going to get, whether they're really patriotic or whether they're really, against their country. Both are equally dangerous, in my opinion. But with immigrants, you kind of have a feeling of, okay, we're sort of in this together. We're here for the same purpose. That's what I find. I don't know about you and your Portuguese friends and your Indian friends, but did you find the same?
Yeah, I'd say that sometimes immigrants are actually more patriotic because they've chosen to come to this country and put their life here. So they actually are sometimes much more patriotic than British people. And yeah, I get what you mean. Like, yeah, they definitely see eye to eye, like they can relate to each other because they're not from here. And it's exactly the same. I understand, like when I'm in another country and I meet Americans or a British person or an Australian, we automatically see eye to eye. We're from the Anglosphere. We're all immigrants in this country, and you can instantly make friends with them and stuff like that. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what I also find mad is that I hope this has changed now. If people haven't woken up to this yet from the past 4 years, especially with the content you see on the internet, then they're doomed for good. But
Yeah.
British people, some do. Some have actually spoken to me about it. Not in like an advice type of way, just having conversations where they are now talking about how can I get the most popular one is the Irish passport, but still, I feel the sentiment of a lot of people going, we don't need a second passport. We've got a British passport. It'll always be a strong passport, which I think is I'm sure it's true for the next 5 decades, fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very dangerous way of looking at it when you think of passports and citizenship, where you're not willing to, when you're not willing to get other ones or move to another country to get another one. Even Ireland, which is a common travel area country.
So
yeah,
my dad is eligible for a second passport, and I was like, okay, look, let's get this. We should all get this passport. No, I'm British. I don't need this passport. Like, yeah, like it was just so funny. Like I was trying to convince him, and he just does not see eye to eye on that issue. Like, but yeah, it's like my mum can kind of understand it. I think she definitely realizes it a bit more now. But my dad is very much like, nope, I don't need it. I've got a British passport. That's good enough. Like, doesn't see the benefits of it.
it's really not good enough. I think no matter what one passport, unless it's like a gotti, like Emirati, Japanese, or Singaporean, maybe just Emirati, I don't think it's ever good just to have just one passport, because a visa policy could change. We saw this with Hungary. The US heavily restricted Hungarian citizens on their ESTA program.
Yep.
Imagine a Hungarian going, the Hungarian passport's fine. Well, not anymore.
Yeah, even the same for the US. Like the US is very much the same. They get told America's the greatest country in the world. They don't think they need a second passport unless they're like, they're in this whole type of sphere. But Brazil actually just restricted visa-free access for Americans and Australians, and maybe New Zealand, Canada, I think. Yeah, one of those countries. And, that's kind of crazy. Like Brazil, like a very open country where it's very easy to emigrate there, just cut off visa-free access for Americans like overnight. And it's like, that can just happen at any point, as you just said. And that's why it's so important to have a second passport. And, you never know what your government's going to do. You never know which war the government's going to get into. And, traveling on a British or an American passport, I think sometimes with a British passport, it's good. But other times, you can be in the wrong country and they really are quite anti-Western. And it can affect you because of that.
Yeah, and at that point, it's irrelevant whether you, and it should be, it shouldn't be irrelevant, but it's irrelevant at that point whether you agree or disagree with the Western or the Eastern values. They just pin you, you're British, so you're a Westerner. But we can't complain about that and not also call out the West for doing the same thing for people with Eastern countries, because they've done the same thing. How many Eastern countries are banned from entering the EU because 3 to 7 countries have banned them? Like, how unfair is that? Like, again, it's what we were talking about at the very start, is the citizens in these countries, they're not at fault for the shit that the government's doing. Like, imagine if the UK government did something that you and I heavily disagreed with, and now because of that, visa waiver access is cut off to the whole of the American hemisphere. Like that's just asinine at that point.
It's the exact same boat that Russians are in. Like, we're sat here. I'm sure that like it's anybody can see that we don't agree with what the UK government is doing. We have no say absolutely whatsoever what the UK government does. And it's the exact same for Russians. Like, they don't have any say in what the government does, but they're the people that get affected at the end of the day. Like, it's the normal people that get affected from everything. And like when I was seeing companies like, withdraw from Russia and all of this because of the sanctions, like McDonald's withdrew from the country, and it's like, what is that going to achieve? Like, at the end of the day, you're just going to put like the local people out of jobs, and it's not going to do anything to it. Like, do you think the Russian government cares if McDonald's isn't in the country? It's the normal people that it affects.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. Like, we don't even see this in the East. We actually see this in the West. I just remembered as you were saying this, where St. Kitts and Nevis, and I think all CBI countries, they've had visa waiver access to the UK limited because of their CBI programs, which and the justification for that was that there are many Russian citizens getting, doing CBI programs in the Caribbean. But you and I both know that St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, all these Caribbean countries, they've restricted it. So it's completely hypocritical because.
Okay, that's not the real reason though. Okay, so.
Oh, is it not?
No. So so far it's only Dominica and Vanuatu. They talked about the other programs, but they haven't actually limited the other programs. Also, most CBI programs, Russians aren't allowed to do it anymore anyway. Yeah. I heard that it's actually because of like Chinese spies and stuff like that, being able to get a CBI passport coming to the UK visa free, like with no restrictions. And that's mainly the reason behind it. Yeah, I'm sure it's a little bit to do with Russia as well. But actually, if you look into it, those programs don't allow Russians anymore anyway.
Yeah, they don't. And actually, with Vanuatu, we can get into that. Vanuatu is just an hell of a program. Like that's embarrassing. Like I want to know what type of bomber clot is investing in Vanuatu.
Yeah, I mean, if Vanuatu was 50K or something like that, it'd be a good deal. But it's 130K, so it's more expensive than like Saint Lucia, which is a much better passport. But something interesting that no one really knows about is if you want this, go ahead and do it. But if you're a Commonwealth citizen, so obviously we both have British passports, we could do this. You can actually deposit around $10,000 in a Pakistani bank account and become Pakistani, and no one knows about this program. So it's like
I don't know what the incentive is though.
Yeah,
it's not the strongest passport.
Pakistan has one of the worst. I think they only have visa-free access to 10 countries, but it's just an out there crazy passport where pretty much it's 10K in a bank account and you can become Pakistani. So
yeah, I always feel a bit on edge with these types of things because I remember when I was in Eastern Europe and someone was telling me, oh yeah, the government here is so corrupt because the government was selling passports for 25,000 euros. I'm like, that's so obviously a scam. Like, there's no. Yeah, okay. But even then, it was Romania, yeah. But even then, it's so obviously a scam. There is no EU passport out there. And this is to anyone watching this. If you see an EU passport being sold for under 600K and it isn't Malta, it's most likely a scam.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is the thing about this industry. I think there's a lot of scammers and, a lot of people that, maybe they can get you a Romanian passport, but, it's only a matter of time before, it gets caught up and you could go to jail for it because it's not real or whatever. Like, and I've heard stories about, because like how Moldovans can get Romanian citizenship, and I've heard stories about people can go to Moldova, get some papers faked and whatever, and get a Romanian passport that way. So it's always better to do it. Like, it's never a good way, a good idea to pay these scammers and get it really cheap, because it's only a matter of time before it gets found out. So
and you might be, if and when it does get found out, you and your whole family could be barred from entering the EU ever again.
You could go to prison as well. So
yeah, exactly. And at that point, and if you go to prison, you've not only ruined your chances with the EU, you've ruined your chances all over the world. Australia's going to reject you, New Zealand's going to reject you, US, Canada, all these countries, they're going to look at you, they're going to say, okay, he's got immigration fraud on his history or whatever.
Never going to let you in. Never.
No chance. Yeah. There's just no point to it. And that's why I don't like it.
Yeah, maybe something we should... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. It was just...
I was going to say, maybe something we should touch on. I'm sure there's a lot of British people watching this that want a second passport. What are the best options for a British person to get a second passport?
Well, I mean, obviously, in my opinion, it's Irish because of the access and the descent. Yep. It is very excludable because not every British person's got an Irish grandmother, an Irish parent. So in that regard, it's a bit of a tough one. But if you have an Irish grandparent and you are under 18, if you have an Irish great grandparent and you're under 18, get your parent to do that immediately before you turn 18, because as soon as you turn 18, that shit's gone. That ship has sailed. You can't get that ever again. In my opinion, it is Irish citizenship, and I talk about it a lot on this channel. Because of the citizenship by descent and also the common travel area. So if you're a British citizen who wants to get, let's say for this example, a second EU passport, okay, Dubrovnik, Croatia looks nice and Lisbon looks nice, everything, but it's not as easy to go there because you need a visa after a certain amount of time. Ireland, you've got free movement, and after 5 years, Yeah, you could learn Irish Gaelic. I'm sure they'd really appreciate that. But it's an English-speaking country mainly. When I was in Ireland, everyone spoke English to me. They understand it perfectly. They speak English there. You
Yeah.
can do the test in English. So it just seems like the best country. If I was a British citizen, let's put it this way: if I was a British citizen and I didn't have an EU passport, I would be looking at Ireland every single day.
Well, yeah, my opinion is, yeah, of course, if you have the, if you can get it by descent, get it, of course. Why wouldn't you? If we're talking about naturalization, I think, yeah, if you can deal with living in Ireland, if you can deal with that, you know, because it's very much the same culture as the UK. If you want to live in, you know, a rainy, cold country and
Yeah,
whatever, then yeah, definitely do 5 years in Ireland. You're going to become Irish, no problem. And also something I also find really interesting that no one talks about is if you're British and you want your child to have an EU passport, have the child in Ireland, because you're British, the child will instantly become Irish and British. Because anyone born on the Isle of Ireland that has a British or an Irish parent is automatically both.
I
So,
think with British it's expired. I don't think they've got like Just Solly anymore.
oh, because when I looked into it, because I know that Ireland before 2004 used to have it for anyone, like you know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, they did.
but
Yeah,
now it's if you're British or Irish, then you can. Because I was looking into it recently. So even if you're British and you had a child born in Northern Ireland, that
yeah.
child would still be able to get a an Irish passport, you know, because of yeah. But it yeah. So if you don't have descent, I would say yeah. First option Ireland. If you're making a bit more money and you like the Mediterranean lifestyle, Portugal is like the number one option. I would say for sure. Like Portugal is such a good option, and outside of Portugal and Ireland, you know, I don't really see many good you know, maybe France because you can. I think if you do a postgraduate program in France for two, and you live there for 2 years, you can get the passport. So that's kind of like a fast track there. But outside of that, there's not really many great options for naturalization in the EU.
Yeah, I mean, what I always find strange is whenever you look into it, because obviously Ireland isn't the savior of all British citizens. You know, there might be a British citizen who has a Croatian mother, perfect, you sorted, good for you.
Yeah.
But even then, what I think is very crucial for people to know is, I'm a dual citizen. I don't know about your case, and I'm a dual citizen pretty much from birth. This isn't like a research type thing.
Yep.
But if you are doing it, do your research because Greek citizenship sounds good on paper. But do you want your kids serving in the army? You have to ask yourself this. Same with Cyprus or Estonia. Like, yeah, Estonia is an EU passport. Are you willing to give up your other passports to become Estonian? If the answer is yes, good, get the passport, whatever. But if the answer is no, yeah, you have to. It's not as black and white as simply an EU passport.
Yep.
Some EU countries will require you to either join the military or give up your other citizenships, or in worst cases, both. So that
Yeah.
is
Yeah. For
worth
sure.
noting.
Yeah. I saw your video on Estonia. That was interesting to learn about, like the non-dual and the conscription stuff. So yeah, I think like you want to go with Ireland or Portugal because
Yeah,
and as well, if you're an EU citizen and you want to get a second EU citizenship, Ireland is great because then you can have access to the UK again.
yeah,
And
exactly
something
that.
that I
That's
find super interesting, but if you're British and you like the European lifestyle, check out Gibraltar because Gibraltar is super
yeah,
interesting because you can live there as a British citizen. You know,
yeah, you
yeah,
can.
it's not exactly cheap, but has I think the income tax rate is 20%. So favorable tax rates. You know, you can hop across the border to Malaga and whatever in Spain whenever you want. And for me, Gibraltar is a really interesting place that I'm looking into.
Yeah, I was looking into Gibraltar too because obviously, yeah, they've got the warmer weather there and everything, and you've got right of abode there with the British passport. If you look at any visa requirement for British citizens map, you'll see that Gibraltar's highlighted in the dark blue, as is Guernsey, Jersey, and the Isle of Man. But yeah, honestly, Gibraltar, yeah, absolutely. Why I'm interested in seeing, I don't know if you saw a lot about this, but the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is basically because of the whole common travel area, they're going to maintain open borders with Northern Ireland. Obviously, most people in Northern Ireland have Irish passports anyway.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if Gibraltar will do a similar thing because, if I'm aware, most people there speak Spanish anyway. It would be interesting to see. Spain's actually quite restrictive on allowing dual citizenship, but maybe there could be a policy in the future where if you are born in Gibraltar, maybe through Just Solly, or you've been living there and you're a Gibraltarian or whatever, you can also get Spanish citizenship.
Yeah, I remember watching a video years ago, about the reason why Spain doesn't actually give Gibraltarians Spanish citizenship. I don't remember why, but there is a reason behind it why they don't give them citizenship. Because yeah, you would think that, well, Spain's laying claim to this land. Surely they would give all the people born there. You know, kind of like the Falkland Islands, where anyone
Yeah.
on the Falklands can become Argentinian. The same thing. But Spain don't actually do that. So, but something that's interesting is if Gibraltar joins the Schengen area, living in Gibraltar, like having residence in Gibraltar could open up, you know, for British people that don't have a second passport, it could open up, you know, the freedom of movement again.
Yeah.
Because when you have any EU residence permit, you can spend any amount of time in the Schengen area as you want.
Yeah.
You know, of course you can't, you know, let's say you have a Dutch residence permit, you can't work in Germany, but you can go across to Germany whenever you want. You know, no one, there's literally no borders in Europe. You can freely go
There
anywhere
are.
you want.
Yeah.
So that's something that a lot of people are shocked by when they go to Europe for the first time. Like, because when I was 16 years old, I cycled from London to Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And obviously, like cycling through the French border, the Belgian border, the Dutch border, like it's literally just a little sign that has
It
a
is. Yeah.
EU flag and it will say NL. And that's it. Wow, you're in a new country.
Yeah, I literally, that's literally the route that I took. Obviously, not cycling, but
Yeah.
that is literally like you see, like Bundesrepublik Deutschland, and you're
Yeah.
in Germany now,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Österreich, and then you're in Austria, and then you get to like Hungary or what have you, and then it's just that EU flag, and there's literally no border control. Although, do you know what's mad?
Yeah. Well,
Austria, they obviously it's open borders, but they've kept the buildings that were once the border controls
all
with
right.
Germany and Hungary.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. I think Switzerland has something similar as well, where they still have the border buildings, the border control buildings, or something like that. But yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, when you, from my experience, when you're crossing, you know, I've crossed many EU borders, and it's literally just a road. You wouldn't even notice it that you're
No,
in
you would.
another country, and it's very similar to states in the US where you just have a sign, "Welcome to Texas," and that's it.
Yeah.
You're in Texas now. But yeah, and like there's a place that I want to visit. I'm sure you know about it, like the town in between Belgium and the Netherlands, where
Oh
like,
yeah.
you know, like it's very like, you know, you can, you know, one shop is half in Belgium, half in the Netherlands, and like I just find those types of places quite interesting to visit. So yeah.
What I always wondered with that town, I don't know what it's called, but I wonder if there's some sort of loophole you can do with citizenship residency. Because let's say there's a house and half of it is in Belgium and half of it is in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Let's say you're a Belgian citizen, but you're thinking, you know what, I want to be Dutch. I'm going to move my bedroom to the Dutch side of the house.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's ever some kind of
Well, yeah,
comedic loophole like that
the way
where you
that they
can go.
did it, yeah, from watching about it, the way that they did it is it's where your front door is. That's
Oh,
where your house is based. So obviously, yeah, it must be very interesting. Like, you know, if one child is born in one hospital, they're Dutch. They're born in another hospital, they're Belgium and whatever. But yeah, it's a really interesting place, and it's like one of the only places in the world where you can just step across and there's like a town truly in between two countries. Yeah, it's one of the only places in the world like that, pretty much.
there's another part. I haven't been. I'd love to go there. There's a part in it's in three countries, so it doesn't really matter. But there's a tri-point border between Slovakia, Austria, and Hungary,
Right.
and it's technically a museum in Hungary for the communist era.
Yeah.
But there's like a pillar that you can stand on where it says, you know, O with the accent, and then S and then M, and then you
Yeah.
can stand on top of it, and you're in three countries at the same time,
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So if there's any, European travelers out there who are looking to, travel to some cool places, I'd say check that place out. Maybe be in three countries at the same time. Try and
Yeah.
get residence in all of them, see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, like that. And also, what I wonder is in Europe, like these enclaves, like it's not just in Belgium and Netherlands. There's also a German enclave in Switzerland. Now, what I always wondered is what the hell went down there during World War II?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I mean, Europe is the home of weird borders and weird, you know, like
yeah,
Gibraltar is a perfect example of that. And also like microstates, like
yeah,
San Marino, the Vatican, and Monaco, Andorra, you know,
yeah.
Liechtenstein, Luxembourg. Like, I want to visit all of these tiny countries and
Yeah.
see what they're like. Like, Europe is the home of that type of weird, small countries and this whole type of thing. pretty
Yeah,
much.
and to me, I'm sure the borders have some sort of cultural justification, but what I prefer about America is how their borders are very, straight lined. But
Yeah,
like in Europe, it looks a bit like this, where technically you're in Germany, but then you're in France, and then you're in Luxembourg. Yeah,
yeah,
but they're all open borders, so it doesn't really matter. But
yeah,
honestly, that is one of the major benefits of the EU, I think, is the open border free movement because it grants so many opportunities. You could be from Latvia and you want to live that Mediterranean lifestyle, you can go to Italy with no problems. Like that's the beauty of it, really.
yeah. Like I remember, like I have a lot of friends in like the Netherlands, for example, and they just their family holidays, they just get in the car and drive down to Italy. And like in the
Yeah,
UK, we definitely don't have that. Where like in Europe, they just get in their car. Okay, I want to go to Italy today. Just drive down to Italy. Like
yeah,
I like that aspect of it. Like you can drive for a day and you're in a complete different place. And the EU has a lot of freedom in that respect when you're living in the Schengen area. And
yeah.
obviously, it's expanding. Croatia joined. Eventually Romania and Bulgaria are going to join. And yeah, it's an interesting place.
Yeah, that whole Austria-Romania beef was crazy. And the only reason I know about it is because at the time I was on a Romanian VPN on my on
All
my
right.
devices. And
Yeah.
honestly, I checked Twitter and it was always in like, screw Austria, boycott Austria,
Yeah.
all that shit. But
Why?
I
Or
to be honest,
was it Austria vetoed Romania joining the Schengen area? Was that it? Or
Austria vetoed
okay.
Romania joining, and I
Yeah.
think, and I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think, if I remember correctly, that it was Belgium that vetoed Bulgaria. If I remember correctly, it was definitely Austria with Romania, but with Bulgaria, I don't remember off the top of my head. But honestly, like the level of Austrian hate you saw on Romanian Twitter at the
Yeah.
time, it was
Yeah.
like, oh, screw Austria, they don't know anything, they're trash. Like it was a wildest thing. But to be honest, I don't anticipate them joining the Schengen this time. I don't expect them joining for the next 5 years, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. But I know that in Bulgaria now they're going to the euro because they have the Bulgarian lev and now it's pegged to the
Yeah,
euro and they're transitioning this year or something like that to the euro. So yeah, these countries are coming closer and closer. And you know, I wonder what the next country is that joins the EU. Um, it's interesting to predict what it's going to be.
I think it might be. I don't know. It might be
Might be the
North
UK.
Macedonia. It might be North Macedonia or Montenegro.
Yeah,
I'd imagine it might actually be Montenegro. I don't think it would be Serbia. I think Serbia's got quite a bit of an anti-West type thing going on because of what happened there.
yeah,
But
yeah,
maybe like
yeah,
Macedonia, Montenegro. I don't imagine Albania joining anytime soon or Bosnia.
yeah,
I think in Europe, these countries for sure. Maybe
yeah.
Georgia, but I
I
don't
mean,
know. There's a dispute with
yeah,
Georgia and whether it's in Europe or not. But yeah,
yeah.
please go.
Well, I think the solution for the UK is not to rejoin the EU. I think the solution is to rejoin the single market. I think the UK was so stupid to leave the single market. Like we're leaving the largest trading bloc in the world. Like if we join basically if we join the single market again, we fix all the problems. Like freedom of movement again, freedom of trade. We're not involved that heavily. Like we're not in the EU Parliament. You can kind of do what you want. Like I think the single market, like a Swiss style type thing, is the way
Yeah.
forward for the UK for sure. I don't think the UK is going to rejoin the EU like for a long time. But you look at Norway, most people would probably think Norway's an EU country, but it's actually not.
It's not. Neither is Iceland,
Yeah,
even though it
exactly.
is Schengen, both of
Yeah,
them.
which is so weird how Iceland is Schengen. It's so far away. Like I always found
Yeah.
that strange. But yeah, I think that is the way forward, and I think that is the direction the UK will go in the coming years.
It certainly makes a lot more sense. I don't know what you think about this, but this asinine thing where they're going, oh yeah, we're gonna create a new trading bloc. We're gonna have free movement with Canada, Australia, and New Zealand.
Yeah.
Like with the EU, if you're Croatian, you're gonna go to Slovenia for a day trip. No British person's gonna go to Toronto for a day trip. That's just not feasible.
Well, I think
Or
that
Auckland.
idea, yeah, I think that idea is kind of gone now. I think that was like
Yeah.
a Boris idea type of thing. Yeah, and it was like a big thing a few years ago, but I think they've given up on that now.
Yeah, they
Uh,
should, because it absolutely makes no sense.
Yeah, yeah, and it was like, oh yeah, we can trade with all these other countries like we used to, and but it literally it makes the most sense to trade with who's closest to you
Yeah.
geographically. Like that's what makes the most sense. And there's been zero benefits from Brexit. Like zero. I'm like, name one positive benefit. I can't name a single one.
I can name one. I felt very powerful. I felt very powerful going through Portuguese customs with a different passport, but that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that's the point. Yeah, there's nothing good that's come of it. You know, they said, "Oh yeah, we can do this, we can do that," blah blah blah, and it's like, I ask anyone in England, like, there's no benefit whatsoever.
No, to be honest, I'm not, obviously I don't know all. I understand some of the arguments people had for it and the arguments people had against it. I understand, but anyone I talk to now who is still going, yeah, it's a good thing. I feel like it's huge cope.
Oh, for sure, yeah, yeah. Like, I was talking to my grandparents, and they still think it's a good thing, but like, they're just cope. Or it doesn't really affect them anyway. They're not trying to travel. It affects young people. Where
Yeah.
young people want to travel, they want to go to the EU, and that's who it really affects. And I remember before Brexit, there was never ever like food shortages in the UK. Like, I've been to Argentina where they're talking about food shortages there. I can reassure you there was no shortage of food in Argentina. Where you come to the UK, I've been to the shops in the UK, there's like no eggs, there's no meat, like, and it's like I'm talking to my parents and they just find it normal now. Like, oh yeah, you have to go to the shop at this time to buy eggs, and it's like they're like, it's crazy how people in the UK just normalize all these things that like should not be happening in a first world country.
Yeah, it's like I'm sure you saw in the Netherlands they released a campaign where it was like to deter young British dudes from coming to Amsterdam and that.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. It was like showing videos of them getting arrested and shit for
Well,
like.
I know that the Dutch don't exactly like the British because they have a reputation of British people go there, get super drunk, high on drugs, and then they get arrested.
Yeah, it's the same with Spain, I think. Maybe not with the drug aspect, but when you hear
For
about
sure, yeah.
Ibiza,
Yeah, for
pardon?
Spain, yeah. I said yeah for sure. In Spain, it's the exact same thing. Yeah,
Yeah, when you hear of Ibiza, you don't think, oh, a nice tropical island. All you hear about are these, lunatics that go there and cause chaos,
yeah.
which is absolutely degenerate. And I don't agree with this sort of hedonism, drinking culture. I think it's completely ridiculous. But
Well, that's another point that we could go on to why people are leaving the West, because they see the West going down this hedonistic way of life, and they want to move to a more conservative, traditionalist country that has family values, you know, these types of values that you don't agree with in the West. And that is like a positive of moving to some of these countries, because yeah, it's not nice to live in a country where drinking, I'd like growing up in the UK, like no one really, the only thing people do is drink. That's literally the only thing people do. Like, and I like how in other countries, I like the culture of, I really like enjoy the culture of like drinking tea and smoking shisha, because it's like there's no alcohol involved. You can have a really good conversation. It's relaxing, and yeah, I prefer that.
yeah, and I don't know about you. I don't know whether you practice teetotalitarianism. If you don't want to share, that's fine. But I find it very weird just to see the drinking culture here is it's very weird because I don't like alcohol. Not a fan of it at all. I've never been drunk in my life, and that is one of the huge merits that I hold to myself.
Yeah.
But it, when I see people, and I don't know about you, but when I think of the definition of hedonism, I don't always think it's a bad thing. I think it's a degenerate hedonism when it gets to be a bad thing. Because the whole point of hedonism, from what I understand, is doing what makes you happy. Now that sort of reminds me of Andrew Henderson's whole thing of go where you're treated best.
Yeah.
But when it gets degenerate and when it gets asinine and when it starts impacting other people, such as drinking, doing drugs, and all of that garbage, then I completely agree that we need to get rid of all of that culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think that drinking ruins a lot of young people's lives. Like,
Agree.
university is just a drinking. It's just it's just full of drinking, full of partying. That's all that people really do. It's just degeneracy in university and in the UK and the US. And yeah, it's really like what I would recommend people do is go, if you're from a place like the UK, go to your town center or your city center on a Friday night, completely sober, and look around at the people, and you will never want to drink ever again. Like you go there and you think, what the hell are these people doing with their lives? Like, and it's just such a different perspective seeing it like that.
Yeah, I agree. I'd imagine it's probably a similar thing with music festivals. I don't like these types of Reading and Glastonbury. I think there you see a lot of degenerate hedonism
Oh, yeah, I
behavior.
agree. Tate said something interesting about this, where he said about like how weird it is that you're like worshiping this musician up on stage. Like you're literally
Bro,
worshiping them. Like,
I completely agree. I didn't know he said that. I didn't see that. But that's what like I've been saying to my mates for years. I'm like, why are we like? I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with Jonestown in Guyana?
I recognize the name. What's special about it?
Okay, so Jim Jones was this American priest. He was some lunatic nutcase who he convinced 900 people to move to Guyana with him because back then it was a socialist country.
Yep.
And pretty much the whole joke of don't drink the Kool-Aid in Guyana comes from the story. It's a horrific story. It's not funny.
Right.
Basically, he forced the 900 people to drink the Kool-Aid that was laced with poison.
No.
But he too had this whole rhetoric around him, this cult of personality, which you see at these music festivals, where everyone's worshiping him. He would pay people to put casts on themselves so he could cure them in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And it's like I never understood it, and I also never understood music festivals for this reason. With a good set of headphones and a pretty satisfactory decibel level, you can have a great vibe to the song at home where no one's drunk, no one's pushing you around in the mud. You're just having a good time to the song. And also, most of the time, you can't even hear what the singer's saying anyway, so it's irrelevant at that
Well,
point.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, I've been to a music festival, a few in London when I was younger, and they are horrible. Like you're literally in this crowd, everyone's just pushing each other around. You know, you're in mud, you can barely breathe, you can't even hear the music. Like everyone, it's just not a good experience. And the people that, let's just be honest, the people that like music festivals are just the people that like to get high and escape reality. Like that's why they enjoy them so much because like I have friends where the high, like I remember like because obviously I've left the country for a long time, coming back here, and you meet up with your old friends, whatever, and you realize you have nothing in common anymore. And like talking to them, the highlight of their year was going to a festival. That was the highlight of their year. The highlight of their year was going to a festival and getting so high that they couldn't even remember the festival. Like,
absolutely.
and you just look at these people, and I like people that get tattoos of like their musician or something. Like, I think if like, I just find that crazy that you will get like a musician tattooed on your body. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I just find it crazy.
I completely agree. It's a huge cult of personality because no, I completely agree with you on that sentiment. It's a huge cult of personality, and it is very cultish sort of. I wouldn't go so far as to say satanic because I think that's where some people in the space can go a little bit extreme and call everything satanic. So I'm not going to do that.
But you
But
have to look at what's that guy, Sam Smith. His performances are literally satanic.
his maybe, but I think what I see a lot is they bubble everyone else who's like performing into the same thing, or maybe that's just what I'm seeing. I'm not too sure, but
Yeah.
I think it's a bit extreme to call all of it satanic. What I will say definitely, it is very cultish to go like I don't like it's just mad like what you said with the highlight of their year. I don't know about what your
Yeah.
highlight of 2022 or so far 2023 is.
Yeah.
I assume it's not listening to a song. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know what my highlight is. Probably arriving in Argentina. That was a good
There we
experience.
go.
Yeah.
That's something
Um,
you've actually done.
yeah, and yeah, it's just crazy how like in the West, how instantly available dopamine is. Because like, how you just said, like it takes a lot to travel to Argentina. Like, you need a lot of money, you need to fly a long time, you're going to the complete opposite side of the world alone, whatever. And like it's so easy to just pay £200, go to a music festival and get drunk or whatever, get high. And like that is such an instant access to dopamine. And it's like, the whole world is kind of going this way now, where with your phone, you can order any food that you want. And it's going to be at your house in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And like, you don't even have to leave your house to get food anymore. And, you have instant access to every movie that's ever existed, every song that's ever existed. And yeah, I like TikTok, and I don't use TikTok because I think that it messes up
No.
your brain and it's terrible for you. And just seeing people, like, I remember being in Argentina and being like on the metro, and just everyone is like this, like phone to their face, like scrolling on TikTok. Like everyone's just so sucked in to TikTok, and it's the same in the UK.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with you on TikTok. You're actually the first dude I've ever met who doesn't have TikTok. That isn't me. So,
Really?
so
Wow.
props to, yeah. So props for that. That's really good, because I don't know about you. I don't have my mobile phone on me. I'll use my remote. But this is what I see with people who consume TikTok. Because let's face it, they are consumers.
Yeah.
They're not only has their attention span being killed in real time, but this is what they do. So they're watching a video, they're scrolling. Like, they don't laugh properly.
Yeah.
They don't laugh properly. They laugh at, so like, if something's really funny, you don't stop laughing after 1 second and get bored. You're thinking about that all day.
Yeah, true.
But
Yeah.
TikTok's I genuinely think, maybe it would have been a smart idea to like put some of my clips up on TikTok, but I genuinely think TikTok is the cancer of modern society.
For sure.
Like,
Yeah, and like another thing is like the algorithm is so crazy. Like people send me TikToks, and like it's annoying. Like people, it's just everyone's using it, so they send me TikToks because they want me to watch them, and I don't have it on my phone, so it like opens up the web browser, whatever, I see it, and like the algorithm is so targeted to them personally, where like any negative trait that person has, the algorithm will show them so much of that negativity, and it like reinforces in their mind. And it's like, especially with women, like it shows them a lot of negative stuff, and like it tells them to hate men. And I think it's the same for a lot of men become incels because of it, because like they're watching this stuff, they hate it, telling them to hate women, no woman's ever going to like you, and it's like so toxic for society, and like the algorithm just shows negativity pretty much.
absolutely. And you know what? It's not just TikTok, to be honest. It's also what I've seen with Reddit. Thankfully, I've never been poisoned by Reddit or TikTok. I'm very fortunate in that regard. I've known some people who have been, and it's not good, and I don't speak to them anymore for obvious reasons. But what you said with this whole incel thing, it's absolutely mental to me, because there's a quote from the film American History X. It's at the end of the film. It's not about this at all, but the quote goes, "Hate is baggage. Life's too short to be pissed off all the time. It's just not worth it." Now, I can't think of a more better quote to live by. But all these people are going, "Oh, I hate this group of people. I hate this group of people. I hate this gender. I hate this gender."
Yeah.
Don't they realize that it's just another divide and conquer strategy? Because let's be honest, no incel is rational. Let's be honest. We've seen them all on the news. They were never normal. They were never people who anyone should look up to. They were selfish morons who thought, "Do you know what? The only way I can be happy in life is by inflicting pain on other people." What type of moronic viewpoint is that? And it's not just TikTok that's fed them that. It's also Reddit, because they put themselves in echo chambers where they thought, okay, if I hate these people, I'm somehow going to be successful.
I mean, I've met guys that use Reddit, and they're always a bit weird. Like, same with same like, and then you get like the really fringe people that aren't they on like 4chan and stuff like that, like, and like those type of communities and whatever. But yeah, I don't really know too much about it. From what I understand, it's like guys that they all convince each other that they're never going to get a woman, and it's women's fault that they're going to be alone for the rest of their lives, so they resent women, and then they become violent, and they're just basically messed up in the head. I think religion in general is very necessary for a society, and like obviously in the West, you know, we are taught that religion is bad, it's old fashioned and whatever. And like I think a lot of the problems in our society right now are because our society is so godless, and because people don't have values anymore, because religion teaches people to have values. And it's like that is one of the reasons why degeneracy is so prevalent in our societies, because people don't believe in God anymore.
Well, when it comes to religion, obviously, I'm not a practicer. Let's put it that way. I'm not a practicer of anyone, really. But what I always tell people is, it's better to say, this is what the way I like to go about it. I'm not an expert on it, which is why I don't practice anyone, because I think it's unfair if you're not educated on the topic. But I always say to people who are hardcore atheists, which is fine, you know, if we want to live in a free society, we have to allow atheists to exist.
Yep.
I always say that's fine if you don't believe in God, but think about it this way: you might not believe in God, but what if God believes in you? How much great stuff could you achieve?
Yeah, no, I used to be a hardcore atheist for sure. Like I didn't believe in God at all. And I went to a very religious school, and they tried to force it down your throat. So of course as a child you're going to reject it because it's forced upon you. But growing up I've realized how powerful religion is for society. And something I heard that completely changed my opinion on God is because I'm sure like as kids in the West we're taught as like God, think of God as a man in the sky type of thing.
Yeah.
Where like somebody said, like, even if you don't believe in God, if someone believes in God, like he said the example about, like, imagine that some people got shipwrecked on a desert island, and these people believed in a God, and like there was two islands. Some people went to one island, some people went to another island. On one island they didn't believe in God, so they killed all the people that got shipwrecked there. On the other island they believed in God, and because of their belief in they believed that they shouldn't kill people because they believed in God. Even if God is not real, their belief in God saved those people's lives. So God as a concept saved those people. It's kind of, I'm not explaining it very
No,
well,
I understand.
but it's like,
No, I
if
understand.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
if believing in God as a concept makes people do good things, then that makes God real, because God, even though it's just a concept, has made people do good things. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And what I also don't like is the division that it can cause, which is very unfortunate because it really shouldn't. If we actually analyze and look at it, it really shouldn't cause this division among people, which I think is really sad. I actually have a video essay coming out in a couple of months about religious division from a film, and it's so sad to see when people hate each other because of that. Like it's like has the world not learned from the 20th century what that shit can cause? But honestly, like, and obviously I wasn't like really in like a religious school or anything, but I am actually quite grateful. I don't know how this happened. I'm actually curious to see how you got your journey going down in this, but how, someone like you grew up in the West, right? You could go down the route of going to festivals, doing drugs, drinking, acting in not in hedonistic ways, but in degenerate ways.
Yep.
What was it that made you sway away from going down that path? Was it a natural instinct, or did you have to like train yourself?
Um, I don't know. I think I've always been told that I'm quite mature for my age. Like I think something about me is like I'm very intellectual. Like I can't have a boring conversation. Like, not boring. Like, how would you word it? Like, I can't have small talk. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
people, oh,
absolutely.
what's the weather like, Stacey? Yeah, it's sunny. Like, like British people's conversations. Like, I just can't have that type of conversation. So I've always wanted to talk about like deep discussions and debate people. And I've always been interested. Like, I remember like watching Parliament as a kid, like watching Parliament live and like visiting Parliament and like all of these things. And just I've always been interested in like learning how the world works and other societies and other cultures. And just for me, like, I just don't get along with the English culture of like going to the pub at the weekend and getting drunk, and like that's a I don't think there's a problem with drinking if it's done in the right places and in proportion. But I think like the way that the UK does it, where people get like, ask anyone in the UK, like people get so violent when they drink it. Like people always get in fights. There's so much violence, like so much degeneracy in the UK. It's really different to when people drink, for example, in Spain or in Portugal and Argentina. Like people are very respectful. It's a family thing. Like people eat barbecue and drink wine, and I think that is completely fine. I think it's when it's like in the UK where people excessively drink that it's a problem. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed. You said you like deep conversations. Well, I've got a bit of a deep question for you, but it's relevant. What are your thoughts? We've brought it up a couple of times. What are your thoughts on escapism?
What do you mean?
When someone goes, do you know what, my life is terrible, so I'm going to
Oh,
drink
right,
or watch this reality TV show
right,
to escape, to temporarily escape from their reality.
well, obviously that is a very negative thing to do, and it's only ever going to get you to end with you worse off than how you were at the start. And it's kind of the same with like antidepressant medication, where people take that and it doesn't fix the problem, and it just masks the problem, and it's like escapism in that sense. And like, people, yeah, I mean, people in the UK very much use alcohol to escape, don't they? Like that's what they do. Like they escape their 9 to 5 by drinking at the weekend, and there's never really a situation where that's going to benefit you. And it's like you, yeah, I always think it's better to deal with the problem head on, and yeah, it's never gonna help you in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with that. It's also quite sad when I think, like, I think there's some forms of escapism that could be fine. Like, if you just want to listen to a song, it's a free country, do what you want. But,
Yep.
and even if you want to ruin your life, once again, if we live by the phrase of a free country, then we have to allow it to happen. But
Yep.
it is always sad when I see, like, I had a mate of mine who sort of went down that road. No longer, I don't speak to him anymore, but it's always sad to see when, I'm sure you've had this too, like how you said, how you come back and you don't really relate to your old friends anymore.
Mhm.
When you were you always sort of against festivals and drinking, like even at 16, 18 years old?
Yeah, I've never really been like for it, but like I went to music concerts when I was a kid and stuff like that. But it was never like, like a rap artist. It was like I've always been interested in like more like I remember seeing like Tame Impala. I don't know if you know him. It's like a band.
No, no.
Like yeah, and it was like I don't know, like I've seen musicians live before, but like now I see like how people worship it, and it's like weird, and like yeah, that whole thing that we just spoke about with the festivals and stuff. But yeah, I think that yeah, I've just never connected with the British culture really, and I think that's why.
Yeah, it must be a natural instinct because I do understand some of that perspective. So it's a sad thing, and how you said you don't like small talk.
Yeah,
I like some films, right?
yeah.
But what I find is I don't like small talk with films where it's like, or not just films or TV shows where it's like, oh, did you see what this person said on Love Island? Which I don't watch, but the
I
principle is the
agree. I
same.
agree. That's the one thing, yeah, where all these British people, they're all talking about Love Island or whatever, and I've never ever watched it in my life, and I like, that's all that they talk about. And like, growing up, I would see my parents watch like, EastEnders and stuff like that, like
Hmm.
reality TV, not reality TV, sorry, but whatever it's called, and
Yeah,
just like I would just be I'm just like there like why are you watching that? Like I just don't see any benefit from it at all. Well, for me, I think it's just because from such a young age I just read encyclopedias, and I would just
yeah,
read like knowledge educational books and stuff like that, and like just kind of made me obsessed with how the world works. And yeah.
yeah. I mean, I agree. I do think there's good media to consume and bad media to consume. Like,
Yeah.
not even with YouTube videos. I think TikTok in general is just a bad place, same as Reddit. But when
Yeah.
it comes to films and TV shows, I do think there are good ones. And it isn't always these non-fiction documentaries. Like, you can watch a intellectual film. Have you seen like Eyes Wide Shut or films
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those films are fine to watch because they've got a deep meaning intellect, or like Fight Club or like American History X. They've all got very different morals of the story. The haters
Yeah.
baggage and all of that, which is completely true. But when it comes to or even YouTube drama or internet drama, which I can't stand, I think it's a huge distraction, as is many things. But I can't stand this whole internet beef culture where people go, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna diss this person. I'm gonna post this picture about them." I think it's just I don't think it's bad that they're doing it. I think it's bad that so many people fall for it and get so heavily invested in the lives of others who they don't even know personally.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any problem with watching films and fiction. I think that
Yeah,
humans have done this all throughout history, like Shakespeare's plays and whatever, like
yeah,
hundreds of years ago. But I think it's like, yeah, like very modern movies in the past 10 years that have a political leaning, and they're a bit of propaganda and stuff like that. But like, I agree, like a lot of Stanley Kubrick's movies are very, like, they have a lot of deeper meanings. And like, the thing I've noticed, like talking to a lot of older successful people, is they're very knowledgeable about films and books, but fiction books and like they're
yeah.
very like and I think that like kind of now it's like everyone only really talks about like non-fiction books, like self-help books, but I think it's really beneficial to read fiction books as well.
Absolutely. It's not with the book, but recently I saw, now this is an old ass film, it's from the 40s, but I saw a British film, Great Expectations,
Right.
and it was such a nice thing to see, such an old film where it was just about the story. There wasn't anything else, and this isn't even going on the political route. Really, it just felt different because in the modern day, I feel like most films, they don't feel like films; they feel like a cash grab.
Yeah.
Like that, I never really see a justification for sequels to be made, ever. I think they're all just made for the money, which is fair enough. You know, the free market has to allow it. But when you get to films like Stanley Kubrick's, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way, or Great Expectations, or these types of films, you get this feeling that the person who made it actually loved doing it, and I think that's monumental in any endeavored field.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're talking about modern films, I would say that Christopher Nolan is an example of that. And maybe Wes Anderson. Like, I'm interested in cinematography. Like, I wouldn't say his stories are that strong, but his cinematography is amazing in his movies. And then, like, you have, like, is it David Fincher? Did he do?
Yeah.
I was watching The Social Network yesterday. It's
Yeah.
such an inspiring movie. I think, like, because I saw a tweet and this guy was saying, like, whenever he feels like he needs some motivation or some inspiration, watch The Social Network. And I fully agree. Like, it's such a good movie to watch for that, and the soundtrack is amazing as well. So yeah, I think there's still great movies being made, but like obviously, you know, the recent thing with Oppenheimer and Barbie, like that whole big thing. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but in my opinion, because I'm not invested in either one, I felt like it was a huge psyop, and I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I don't really know what it was about, to be honest. I'm not really in that type of space. Like, I just knew that both were being released on the same day or something, and there was a big, like, there was memes about it and stuff. But yeah, I need to watch Oppenheimer. Like, I haven't watched it yet, but I need to watch Oppenheimer for sure. And yeah, Christopher Nolan is a great director. Yeah, one of the best.
Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, Christopher Nolan, I think maybe, and as you said, Wes Anderson, maybe some other ones like Finch, or I don't know what his last film was, but
well, he's releasing. Isn't he releasing Napoleon? Is it David?
Oh, is he? I didn't know that was him.
I think it's David Fincher or one of those guys is doing Napoleon, which is coming out later this year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I saw the trailer for Napoleon, but I didn't know that it was from him. If it was,
Right.
But yeah, honestly, in like films, I think are more acceptable to watch than TV shows. Like a film has a purpose, but you watch not even a reality TV show. Let's ignore these, you know, Love Island or X on the Beach or soap operas like EastEnders or you know Jacob Street or whatever. That's probably a made-up one. Yeah. But like, I think TV shows, there's something about them which is much more toxic to you. I think it's the same like TikTok.
Yeah, like I've never watched like Big Bang Theory or Friends or whatever. And like I've seen clips of it and it's like so brain dead. I don't know how people watch it. Like those American type of shows, you know, where the laughing soundtrack is put in. Like I can't stand those shows. But one show I do love is Narcos on Netflix.
I've not seen it.
That I love that show because it's half in Spanish and half in English. So that show was my basis for learning Spanish and it follows like Pablo Escobar's life and it's really well made and it feels like a movie. And that's like one of the only TV shows I've ever watched in my life because it just felt like a movie. It was so good.
Absolutely, I agree. Although I will say, I think there's a bit of a danger with Netflix. I do feel like if there's any hub for propaganda, it's probably on these streaming services. Not saying Netflix specifically, but you know, like all these streaming services, maybe even YouTube now. I think, in one sense, the algorithm on YouTube is very good because I think for you or me, you know, you found me through YouTube, right?
And it's very clear why YouTube recommended your channel because I'm watching other YouTubers about these things. And something I find is YouTube really recommends me a lot of small YouTubers now. And I usually like subscribe to them because I love seeing people when they first start off and like following their journey. I find that really interesting. And yeah, my YouTube recommends me a lot of small creators.
Yeah, that's the perfect thing. But that matters because of what you watched and what you searched for. And in that regard, I do find that it's a positive thing that what the algorithm did in, you know, recommending me to you, and then we're on this call right now. So that's a good thing. But then it can also be a dangerous thing where someone who probably does watch these sort of degenerate psyop videos, or just videos of people complaining about politics. Like, no one actually cares. If you think some Republican in America cares about the Barbie movie enough to rant about it for 40 minutes, I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about. He doesn't care. So why is anyone watching him, type of thing? It's just grifting at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I fell down that rabbit hole when I was younger, like getting obsessed with politics and political commentators, like the guy you just mentioned that did the Barbie thing, and like other ones like that, like watching them, and it's just so negative. Like, you think that it's going to affect your life, and like now pretty much all I watch is like educational YouTubers now and again, and like I try to not. I don't really watch any entertainment YouTubers anymore because of that, and I think political ones are extremely bad. You just get sucked in, and like negativity sells. And there's, I think, like some people have really good like some people that are kind of like between entertainment and education, like Joe Rogan and Lex Fridman. Like, their podcasts are really good, really insightful. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree, but I think the other ones, like, I mean, we can have a debate whether it's controlled ops or not, but I don't know. But I do agree whether this whole politics space, and you see it on both the left and the right. I use quotation marks, so I think it's the same bird. It doesn't really matter, but it is so negative because it just feeds that divide thing where, like, let's say you are more of a left-leaning entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And then you meet more of a right-leaning entrepreneur. Is it important to bring up politics, or are you going to go, do you know what, let's make a deal, let's make some money together, let's do business together? What's more important?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, billionaires. Do you think the billionaire really cares? Like, when billionaires are doing deals with each other, of course they don't.
It was about negativity is so popular. One, because it's a coping mechanism. It just is. It's easier to be negative than positive. But number two, it sells well, which is very sad because I imagine you're the same, where, it's unfortunate when people say that a person is too positive. It's unfortunate because it means they've accepted that their reality isn't as good as it should be in a dream world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Western world is very, very negative, and yeah, I mean, the culture, the stuff that people consume is made to be very negative, and like you said, negativity sells. That's why the news in the UK has all the negative stuff, where the news in other countries is so positive and inspirational. And yeah, just that's why I enjoy being in other parts of the world where it's so much more positive, and people aren't like that.
But I think the whole thing is, I think seeing the whole world is absolutely beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, so 2 points on that. I have family in a lot of like the Anglosphere countries, and they all say that New Zealand feels like the UK in the 1970s, apparently. That's what they...
Yeah, I've heard that too.
So, and then your other point, yeah, I would say for you, like, you've just finished your A-levels. The best thing for you to do now is to travel and to see all these countries and develop your own opinion on each country, and to figure out where you want to live. And that is the most beneficial thing any young person can do, is just to explore the world. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, you get so many business ideas, and you get so many opportunities traveling, so many opportunities to meet people. You see business opportunities in other countries. You also see stuff being done in that country that could be done in your own country so much better, or vice versa. And it's just so beneficial. And like, learning a second language is so beneficial as well.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think it is actually crucial in the modern world to be able to speak multiple languages, two at the minimum. But if you're going to go to the high numbers, that's absolutely fantastic. I agree with that. But yeah, but I think again, it's that thing where, with the learning languages thing, just as you brought it up, I assume you know Spanish quite well.
Yeah. So I'm learning Spanish right now. I'm not like that fluent. I can have a conversation, but I'm learning every day. Like, I should be like pretty fluent in the next couple of months. So like my goal now is like master Spanish, and then go on to the next language after that, which might be Portuguese, or I'm very interested in learning Russian as well. So for you, do you only speak English?
No, I speak a couple other ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually learning Finnish. So
really? Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I will admit, the only reason I chose Finnish is because I heard a joke about it, which was enough to sell me. But But
Yeah.
Finnish is a good language because it's a gender neutral language.
Right.
Because there's no like with Portuguese, you say I know a bit of Portuguese. You say like he is ela, she is ela. With
Yeah.
Finnish, if you want to say he is, she is, it's just hanon. So it's very simple in that
Yeah, I mean,
regard.
something weird, like when I'm talking to Spanish people and they're speaking English to me, they always mix up he and she, which is so weird because their language has
Yeah, has
gender
gender.
stuff. So
Yeah,
I don't know why, but that's something I've noticed. Like specifically, people from Argentina, they always mix up he and she. Like they'll say, "Oh, he did this," but they're talking about a girl and vice versa. So I don't know.
that's bizarre.
People that speak pretty good English mix it up. I
Yeah,
don't know why they do it, but yeah, that's something I just observed. And yeah, like learning a language is, it's never been easier to learn a language. Like,
absolutely.
you know, number one, of course, be there. But if you can't be there, just consume as much media as possible and practice your speaking and try find someone in that country where you can do a Zoom call. Like, but just watching TV shows in the language, reading in the language, listen to songs in the language, and so your brain just takes in all that information. And yeah, that's the best way I think.
Absolutely. And like and obviously with the apps, like people always go like we've obviously discussed about the cancer that is TikTok and Reddit and like political social media. But then a lot of people watch it. Some people who might be watching this far in might be going, okay, but what's the solution? Get Duolingo. That's what I say. Get Duolingo because if you're going to watch TikTok all day, you've got 3 minutes to do a language a day. So
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Duolingo actually teaches you a language though. Like, I get what you're saying, it's a positive thing to do, but yeah, for me, like Duolingo just goes in one ear, comes out the other. Like that's
I'm
what
the opposite.
I
I'm the opposite. I haven't been doing Finnish for a while, but I do it on two apps because I get more Finnish going in that way.
yeah.
And Duolingo is quite good because you recognise the words more often. In that regard, it's good. When I was doing Latin became very easy after doing it for about a year. So
Yeah. I mean, an app I would recommend for people is called Falou or Falou, Falou, and it teaches you through conversation. So you will see a
uh,
conversation, something that can be useful, like getting a taxi, and you will listen to the conversation, and then you have to speak the conversation bit by bit, and it records you and uses voice like recognition, and then you can play back and hear yourself speaking in another language in this conversation, and that for me is like one of the best things.
yeah, that sounds good.
Useful.
Duolingo does that on a few courses. They did do something similar on the Portuguese course, but they don't do it on the Finnish or the Latin in that regard. But they did do it in the Portuguese. They did a similar one where basically it would read you a story and then it would ask you, why is Amelia angry on the plane or something, and you had to
Yeah,
say
yeah,
why.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, absolutely. But when do you think that when you are learning a second language, like you're learning Spanish, don't you feel like you become so much more aware of other cultures in general?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you learn a second language, you also learn so much about the country's culture. And, you know, it's like if you just learn Spanish, if you just want to learn, for example, the Argentinian dialect of Spanish, you're inevitably going to learn about every single other Spanish speaking country. And it's just so good for learning about, you know, I think the biggest benefit is for travel. Like the experience you will have in a country when you speak the language compared to when you don't is insane. Like
Yeah,
how
agreed.
people treat you when you speak, even if it's just a few words, even if you're just saying "Hola, cómo estás," like just basics, they will treat you so much better than if you walk in, "Hi, do you speak English?" Like straight
Yeah,
away. Like you have to show them some respect and show them, like, even if you don't speak that language, the fact that you tried, they will respect that so much more. And yeah,
yeah,
but if you can have conversations in the language, it will just make your travel experiences so much better. Like, and that's why, you know, Spanish is really good because then you have the whole of South America covered, apart from Brazil, obviously. But once you learn Spanish, you can pretty easily learn Portuguese because
yeah.
the languages are so similar. And then obviously, like Russian, you have all the post-Soviet states that you can travel when you learn Russian. If you're interested in Africa, you learn French because then you have all the countries down in Africa, and it's like, yeah, I think it's much because I was originally learning Dutch because I lived in the Netherlands, but like it just gets to a point where, yeah, it's fun to learn Dutch, but everyone in the Netherlands speaks English, and there's no real benefit if I'm not going to live in the Netherlands. So So that's
Yeah,
what.
agreed. And actually, I agree. And actually, when I was in Portugal, I actually do understand what you're saying, where the people there sort of appreciated that, even if it was just like, I remember once I was on the beach and a woman came up to me and she started talking to me in Portuguese. And
Yeah,
obviously, the first thing I said was, desculpa, you não falo inglês. No, you know, falo português. And then
yeah,
she asked me, what language do I speak? I said English. And then she actually spoke pretty good English, but she seemed a bit happier when I went to the airport to
yeah, yeah,
check in.
yeah,
I went like, você fala inglês? And then they'd go, yeah, but they'd sort of be
yeah.
happy about it. It's not just the stereotypical
Yeah.
idiotic British tourist who
The
thinks
one,
everyone should speak English.
the one country where people don't like you doing that is the Netherlands. So I don't know. I don't know. You said have you been there yet or not?
I've been to the Netherlands,
Well, in
yeah,
the
yeah.
Netherlands, when I used to say to people, "Speak your Engels," which is like, "Do you speak English and Dutch?" They would just look at me like, so like they don't want. In the Netherlands, they just prefer if you just start talking English straight away, because everybody like English. Everybody, I mean, even if you're 60 years old, you'll speak English in the Netherlands. They just prefer you start speaking English. You don't need to say to people, "Hi, do you speak English?" They actually find it a bit offensive or something. Like they just prefer you to start talking in English. That's the only country where they don't want you to really talk in their own language if you're not fluent, which is something that's interesting about that. Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Actually, I wonder why that is, because to me that doesn't really make sense if someone would be offended that a tourist has learned a bit of their native language when entering your country. Like,
I don't know. It's just
it,
because they're so proud that they speak good English. They just want to like it's the type of place where it makes it almost impossible to learn the language because, of course, in Portugal, even if the person speaks fluent English and you're trying to speak Portuguese, they'll speak back to you in Portuguese. But in the Netherlands, instantly they'll switch to English, and it makes it basically impossible to learn the language because no one wants to speak to you in Dutch. They all want to
uh,
speak to you in English.
Right, well, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you enjoyed this very different type of video on this channel. Hopefully you made it to the end, and hopefully you found something of value on this episode. Once again, if you'd like to keep up with me, then you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, but you can also follow me on Rumble, X, and Instagram. I also have Luke's details down below in the description. Thank you for joining me today.